How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and I'm always excited to break down the latest in Mets land because one, Juan Soto's a New York Met, and two, David Stearns is not done making moves this offseason, which is exactly why in our Big Mets Update segment here, we're going to get into how the Mets are in fact targeting both Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso, not so much one or the other, which was an initial belief by many fans, including myself to a degree. So let's deep dive the latest reporting, which has everything to do between these two players, and ultimately, what would the configuration of this Mets infield look like should both Bregman and Alonso be in Flushing for 2025 and beyond. From there, we're going to get into our rivals in the Philadelphia Phillies making a key splash of their rotation, landing a coveted southpaw who I personally would have loved to see land in Queens, that being in Jesus Luzardo. We'll get into the immediate impact it has for the Phillies for the better, and for the Mets, how are they going to go about continuing to add to their rotation? Thank you guys so much for letting us know your initial reactions and comments down below. Smashing that like and subscribe button as you first chime in, and as always, hearing from our amazing sponsor at BetUS that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Head over to betus.com.pa today, folks. That way you too can get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for whatever you want to bet on, folks. It is NFL Sunday. It's going to be Christmas right around the corner. We got big games on Christmas Day itself, including my Steelers against the Kansas City Chiefs. So whatever you want to bet on the coming days, whether it's football, NBA, NHL, you name it, we got you covered here at BetUS. Check them out today, everybody. But now let's check out the latest here with the Amazons. And first, a little tidbit here on Sean Manaea, the Simone Southpaw, a man that I think we all would love to see back in Queens, as long as it's not on a guaranteed 4 or 5 year deal. I think David Stearns would say the exact same thing. And Sean Manaea spoke to MLB Network over this past day or so, highlighting really how the offseason has been going for him. And he is quoted here with the following: "Whatever team I'm on, I'm going to put my heart and soul into it." That is evidently true after what we saw Manaea do in his one and potentially only year in Flushing, Queens. But I'm here to tell you that the Mets want Manaea back. Manaea wants to be a Met again, the same way that Pete Alonso and the Mets just feel like this foregone conclusion that they will rekindle the relationship once again heading into 2025. Check out the full interview there on MLB Network's X or YouTube channel with Sean Manaea. Some great tidbits from him on how his offseason's going. Not only as now a newlywed, congratulations to him and his partner, but ultimately Manaea and how he's looking for 2025 and beyond. Would love him back in this Mets rotation at the right price, and given how this market is currently working, I think things will continue to potentially favor a team like the Mets that are certainly not chompy at the bit to sign a guy as soon as humanly possible. Now, to go from the Simone Southpaw, let's pivot now into everything having to do with Polar Bear Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman, because it first comes here from Michael Mayer Metsmerize, who I reference on the platform plenty. For those that don't know Mayer, he does a tremendous job. One of the main people there for Metsmerize blog, is very credible as well. Definitely one of the more reputable guys in this Mets space that does consistent writing for the Mets on a daily basis. And he says sources, Mets continue to show interest in Alex Bregman. They're a legitimate potential landing spot for the infielder. Now, the emphasis on legitimate is really what we're looking at here, because Mayer knows that the Mets have been involved in the Bregman market. But for him to go out of his way to now tweet this is telling us that yes, this is legit. The same sources that he is being heard right now that has been going around the industry is relaying that yes, this is a legit pursuit. This is not one that's supposed to be deemed as, oh, it just simply for Scott Boras to put the Mets name out there to have the price rise. That's about it. It truly appears that there's more realism behind this than there ever was in the potential Willie Adames pursuit, where that felt a bit more, not certainly something that was going to come to fruition as Adames signed his 7-year contract with the San Francisco Giants. But Bregman, who doesn't have an overly big market right now, headlined by teams like the Detroit Tigers, the Toronto Blue Jays, and a couple others, the Mets are steadily in that mix as we speak. But the great question has been, okay, and the Mets are going to bring Alex Bregman, surely they're going to allow Pete Alonso to walk. It's not going to be one or the other. They can't invest north of $200+ million, potentially more than Max Fried's contract with the Yankees, and Alex Bregman when you want the Polar Bear back. Well, as I've told you guys all offseason long, the Mets have more than enough money to work with. We all know this with Steve Cohen. The $805 million in total value of the Juan Soto contract only goes so far, knowing that it's not like it has an immediate hit. Yes, it's a $120 million gross hit that we see for 2025 with that massive signing bonus for Soto. But even then, the Mets can comfortably spend in a lot of different areas, which is exactly why when Michael Mayer was asked by a fan, what is his understanding? Is it going to be one or the other between Alonso and Bregman, the Mets pursuit? And his reply is simply, my understanding is no. Apologies, folks, a little under the weather, so if I pause to cough for a second, you know exactly why. But why does this stand out so much to me? It is clear. It is clear as day that the Mets want a defensive upgrade in this infield. We talked about it with Willie Adames. We're going to further talk about it here with Alex Bregman. And listen, I proposed this on the platform just over the past couple days as we recently spoke on Pete Alonso on our videos and live streams if you checked it out. I've said the best case scenario, I think everyone would agree, would be bringing back Polar Bear Pete Alonso on first base for, say, a 4 or 5 year deal at, say, 20 to 25 plus mil AAV with an opt-out after the first and or second year, which gives Alonso full control and banking on himself and having less pressure than he did with Boris last year, and an inevitable walk year where he can decide to walk a year or two into his contract if he really balls out and looks for a $250 million contract potentially, and then the Mets can, say, try to go after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. an offseason from now, should that in fact become the reality of a contract and Alonso returning. But now you add in Bregman at third base potentially, and Vientos at DH, and in my opinion, you have the best of both worlds. You have the best defensive infield that you could possibly have for 2025, especially when looking at Lindor and Bregman's tandem right there, because Alex Bregman, folks, is one of the better all-around third basemen that we've seen in Major League Baseball for a number of years now. This is not something that just started. I would like to make clear, especially in the case of Bregman, this is something that has been ongoing with them over the past couple years, but especially this past season for Bregman, he put up some tremendous defensive numbers. He was actually a plus, if I'm not mistaken. Alex Bregman was, in fact, a plus defender per Fangraphs, +9, which was very, very impressive to see, and that is not something that's a commonality with him every single season. He's always been right around above league average defender. However, now Bregman, as you see, who posted over 4 WAR this past year, 118 WRC plus, 26 home runs, 75 RBIs, is exactly one looking at a consistent third baseman. All of his peripherals and how he would handle Citi Field are identical to how he would handle his normal career. So 26 home runs this past season there would have been 26 home runs if every single game was at Citi Field. Simply put, Alex Bregman on a 5-6 year deal at the age of 30. Yes, you can expect a decline after a couple years. I think that's kind of fair, but you're still getting him in the peak prime of his career right now. A multi-time World Series winner, a plus offensive and defensive player for this Mets team, in which they have such a defensive net negative there at third base and Mark Vientos. Between the two, not that Vientos is the worst thing imaginable defensively, because he's not, but Vientos is one of the worst defensive third basemen in Major League Baseball, whereas Alex Bregman is the complete opposite. He was a Gold Glover last year out of the American League. Even though I know Gold Glove, and that's a completely different debate, it is not nearly as credible as it used to be as to what that actually means for a player, because the voting system is nothing short of a joke, but that's a discussion for another day. Bregman, Alonso, Vientos, who wouldn't love that 1-2-3 punch that adds immediate help around Lindor, Nimmo, Soto, and gives the Mets a deeper lineup than they ever had in my personal lifetime as a fan for the most part. You'd have protection right behind Soto. Then you'd have Bregman right in the heart of the order. Then you got Marky V. Then you got Alvy, who's absolutely bouncing back as long as he can stay healthy next year. Looking at the consistency with the power. Looking at every aspect of this lineup, even the newcomers potentially, if you don't trade them in the Luis Angel Acuñas down the road, the Drew Gilberts. I'm looking forward to them all, but this is how you put up the best World Series caliber roster for 2025, offensively at least, from everything that we've seen at this point in time. Okay, folks, so what does this mean? Are the Mets going to go for certain down this route, or they're going to go with Bregman at third, Alonso at first, and Vientos at DH? Because there has been some widespread belief by some fans saying, hey, why not put Alex Bregman at second base, which was kind of initially proposed with Willie Adames a little bit, trade Jeff McNeil and or others there, and keep Vientos at third to continue his development. I see that as well. I don't think that's an impossible route to find ourselves in. However, I think it's improbable, and here's why. Why would the Mets go out of their way to sign Alex Bregman on a 5-6+ year deal, which I do think still feels a little far-fetched until we find it become reality? It kind of is a little bizarre to me to see the Mets this heavily involved in Bregman. It's not something I at all thought was going to be the case heading into the offseason, but shame on me for not prioritizing the defense as much as David Stearns is clearly. But here's the thing with this defensive configuration. Why would you add Alex Bregman, who's far and away the superior defender in every aspect of his game and just a better overall player than Vientos right now, to have play a secondary position when the Mets have a plethora of in-house talent that they can choose at second base between McNeil currently, if they bring back Iglesias, especially off the bench, which I think is perfect for them, even if he has a lesser role next year, because he could be a mentor for the Acuñas, the Williams, and the Mauricios of the world that are all guys that could be in that second base possibility. at any point throughout the course of 2025, should they not be traded. What are you left with? Endless reasons to believe Vientos does make most sense at DH. Bregman at third base. Yes, you're not going to have this rotating door at DH, but that's fine because you're likely going to salary dump Starling Marte in the process. Really hard to envision a role where you have Bregman on this roster, Alonso back, and Vientos as your pretty much standard everyday DH without a guy being dealt in Marte, who at this point has such limited ability because he's not going to be an everyday outfielder for you with our current configuration, and you're not going to have him come off the bench constantly. I think Marte can bring more value to another squad outside the Mets should they go down the route of making these moves happen. Now, is it a guarantee for the Mets to make these moves? No, of course it isn't. Nothing is a guarantee when it comes to anything every single offseason. Even how confident I was about Juan Soto going back to a year plus ago when he was first acquired by the New York Yankees, even in those moments, I still firmly believe, yeah, of course there's a great reality where Juan Soto could find himself going back to the Yankees. That was not out of the realm of possibility, but the same way that the Mets, and I've had optimism about them, they have been they've given me endless reasons to be optimistic because they have made multiple moves over the years that went directly in hand with what they reportedly said that they were going to do, and they've even surprised us leaps and bounds beyond what we initially expected at times. So, in the case of this configuration, what will happen? That has yet to be seen. Is it true, though, that they are both being heavily pursued by the Mets, not just one or the other? Yes, that does in fact be the case at this point in time. Furthermore, what really stands out to me about this situation for the Mets is if they do in fact show their willingness, and even if they don't land both in the end, but we find out that they're really thick in the contract negotiations, say they bring back Alonso, but they don't bring in Bregman, because Bregman gets like a 7-year, $220 million deal somehow from the Toronto Blue Jays because they're just oh so desperate. It wasn't for a lack of effort on the Mets end. I don't blame them for not going that far because I don't think anyone wants Bregman at length. I have a lot of pessimism with Bregman just after 3 years into, say, a 5-6 year contract, but we're talking about a win-now window. I understand the priority here for the Mets, and I certainly do in the case of Bregman, where he's at in his career, how he would project at Citi Field, and knowing that, again, this is going to be a dogfight in the NL for years to come between the Dodgers, the Padres, the Phillies, the Braves, the Brewers, and multiple other teams in the Central. There's only like 2 truly bad teams in the NL right now, and that's the Marlins and the Rockies. Everyone else is either a fringe wildcard team or they're a true playoff caliber team, but a lot of them aren't going to make playoffs because of the simple fact that a lot of teams are really, really good in the National League in contrast to the American League. So I'm really excited and fascinated to see how this is all going to play out, everybody. So let me know in the comments down below, are you for or against the Mets potentially landing both Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso this offseason? I certainly see the pros far outweighing the cons, but I also understand the willingness to say, hey, let's be involved in these markets. We're still probably only going to land one of them, and then we're going to go heavily after potentially Vladimir Guerrero Jr. an offseason from now. If Alonso is not the guy we bring back, or if we have an opt-out after the first year, I think that there's still a lot of potential there for what the Mets are envisioning beyond this offseason when evaluating Bregman and Alonso. I think that goes directly in hand why they haven't been as aggressive, reportedly, as they have at this point in the market, really chompy at the bit to get a deal done right away. This is nothing personal against Pete, nor is this anything personal against Bregman, even though that they don't have a pre-existing relationship all that much outside of David Stearns to an extent with Bregman during his time with the Houston Astros as assistant GM. What I can tell you is that the Mets are putting themselves in a position to spend smartly, to play the market right, and to make sure that Scott Boras doesn't overforce his hand the way that maybe you can argue he did to a certain extent with Juan Soto. We'll see how these things play out, everybody. Again, apologies for the stops here and there. I appreciate everyone's patience. So now, folks, let's transition from talking about Alex Bregman and how, again, second base, it's a possibility, but at the end of the day, are you really going to move him to second base when he's such a better defender? Maybe in a couple of years, maybe you want to shift Vientos back to third base down the road. I mean, who knows? Again, I don't think that makes too much sense either if you're going to make him a standalone DH. Do I want Vientos to develop more at third base? Yes. But do I want the Mets to put out the best roster possible for 2025 with things they can control and don't hurt them too long term in the case of Bregman? Also, yes. I think we can understand both sides of the coin here. The same way that, some fans may not understand this as much as others, and unfortunately for me, I understand this move a lot, and I also understand why I think that this is a very smart move by a rival team, the Mets. Let's talk about now, briefly, how Jesus Luzardo is in fact a Philadelphia Philly. Yes, this one crushes me, everybody. We see Robert Murray, initially breaking news. The Philadelphia Phillies are acquiring Jesus Luzardo from the Miami Marlins. And in return, this was a breakdown I gave. The Phillies are giving up their number 4 prospect and top 100 ranked prospect, shortstop Starlin Caba, as well as their 23rd prospect and outfielder. I'm going to butcher the first name, so we're going to go with maybe Amarian Boyd. And when looking at this return, this is essentially the equivalent of the Mets giving up one of Drew Gilbert or Ryan Clifford and a prospect of lesser value for Luzardo. Jesus, who still has 2 years left of control in his contract, coming off of an injury-riddled season in 2024 with that shoulder, I believe, with the Miami Marlins, if I'm not mistaken. Peter Bendix, the new guy at the helm there. We all are very aware that in the case of Bendix and the Marlins, he was not going to be stubborn to trade within the division. We know that he's a newcomer there. He's doing a complete rebuild of the team that he wants to build and draft, so he's perfectly fine trading with anyone and everyone. Quite the contrast at times from, say, Mike Rizzo, who doesn't always want to trade in the division from the Nationals, for example. So now looking at what the Marlins did here, they do in fact get a solid prospect return for Luzardo coming off of a down year. I do feel like they could have gone more at the trade deadline. Maybe I'm wrong there, but if Luzardo really was healthy and was able to perform to his 2022 and 2023 caliber, I think we would have seen a higher value come the deadline. No less, Luzardo now enters the fold for the Phillies, who already have Zach Wheeler, who already have Ranger Suarez, who already have Aaron Nola, who already have Christopher Sanchez. I mean, this is one of the better rotations in all of the National League. And you could even make the argument that this actually allows the Phillies to get creative should they want to trade a starter, should they wish, maybe a Sanchez especially, and they go down the road to potentially consider to do something like that. Especially when you look at the depth that they currently have and knowing that they're not going to spend much offensively this offseason, they're going to need to be creative in the trade market like they've been with David Dombrowski this offseason thus far in order to really retool their team and to be better for 2025. Now, for the Mets, would you have given up a similar prospect return like a Drew Gilbert or Ryan Clifford for a pitcher with 2 years of control that throws gas with a lot of upside and when at his best is one of the better young starters in the National League? Personally, I think I would have been more willing with Clifford than Gilbert, obviously, but even though I still would have had some pessimism there, I think Luzardo, would have done wonders in a ballpark at Citi Field half the season, especially in this Mets pitching lab. And I also think that there's a route where Luzardo doesn't have as much success as maybe you initially think with the Phillies because he's pitching in that batter's park half the season. Let's see if he adjusts well like those other Philly pitchers have, because headlined by Wheeler, we know that they've gotten the job done plenty over the past couple of years, but now they have not only a formidable rotation, one of the best in the National League, and they look to hope that that helps carry them throughout the course of 2025 when they have their highs or lows, a lot of peaks and valleys with that Philadelphia Philly boom or bust offense. So the Phillies land a young, controllable starter that, in my opinion, was a perfect backup plan. If you lost out on Garrett Crochet, would have costed you a lot less, has major upside, and is young and controllable, and is a lefty. Unfortunately for the Mets, for whatever reasons they may be, maybe just the prospect cost in general, they decide to not go down that route. So does this mean that Simone Southpaw Shamanai is inevitably returning? Does this mean that Walker Buehler and or Nick Pivetta are coming here? Does this mean that the Mets are going crazy for Luis Castillo or someone else in the trade market that we haven't emphasized as much at this point? We will soon find out. But yes, more pitchers are coming off the board, and this is one of those that I have been most enamored with, mainly because a year and a half ago or so, the Marlins proposed a trade offer that would have sent Jesus Luzardo to the Mets in return for Brett Beatty. Belly up or said no, and my heart says, oh my goodness gracious, what could have been? That is what I'll leave you with on the Phillies' latest impact. They're getting better with their rotation. The Mets still have major work to do there, and that goes without saying. Now, folks, to cap off the show, before we get out of here, thank you guys so much for smashing that like and subscribe button as you always do, letting us know your continued thoughts on Alex Bregman, Pete Alonso, and everything in between. But before we wrap things up, I just want to give a massive shout out to my buddy Dave, a tremendous member and friend here on the platform. Dave was beyond generous to send a couple things my way as we got to the holiday season, including this fantastic Francisco Lindor photo, which I'm going to frame and put on my wall behind me. Also, including this tremendous Mets shirt, which I absolutely love, that you guys can see. It's embroidered and everything. So sick. One of my favorite Mets shirts I now have in the collection. So again, Dave, thank you so much. You are beyond generous. I'm always appreciative of you and all my followers here on the platform, everybody. And also, thank you so much as well for this awesome shirt here that has Mets on the front and then says Wardy on the back. I know you guys might not be able to see that well. He also gave me a Francisco Lindor hoodie. So again, Dave, thank you so much to all my followers who have sent things over the years. I greatly appreciate every single one of you. If you guys ever want to send things my way because you'd like to see displayed behind me or for me to rep during streams, feel free to check out my P.O. box in the description down below. Never asked best. Always appreciate. I'm always grateful for anything and everything Mets related sent my way. Love you guys to death. Let's go Mets, baby. I'll talk to you guys again probably later today, where I feel like more inevitable news is coming for the team in Queens. Peace out, folks. Have a great one.